Mr. Jennings, nice to have you here. You are the founder of the 70-20-10 model. What can a human resource department, a learning department, a training department do to assure the informal learning?
I think it's a matter of what the human resource department and the training and learning department can do to support and facilitate informal learning, because informal learning occurs anywhere. It's occurring all the time. The challenge for human resources is to identify where it can best be exploited. So it's not about trying to manage it. It's about trying to support it. It's about creating the right conditions. It's about changing the mindset. And I talked today quite a lot about mindset. And I think that's one of the key elements of having the right mindset. And that's to think about development as something which should be part of work. And how do we weave that into everyday practice through experience, through practice, through conversations and reflection.
Yeah. But when you interfere with the informal learning, in any way, does it become formal learning?
It depends on what the interference is. I think if the interference is we must control this and manage it and measure it in the way we want to measure it, yes, it does interfere, because then it ceases being informal learning. But it can be supported. I often say to people when they ask the question, how can we manage informal learning? And I say, that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
You don't manage it, you observe it, you understand it, and you support it to happen as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult because you can't set a set of processes that will ensure informal learning happens. It just happens.
Yeah.
The answer is, how do we encourage it and support it?
And since the Dutch healthcare is in transition, what is needed to make the bridge between the existing training department, the formal, and the future self-directed teams, the informal?
Again, I think it's the way to approach it is to see it as an extension, as to how do we develop beyond the course, the class, the structured training. And again, it comes back to starting with what I would call low-hanging fruit. Looking at your own organisation and understand where informal workplace learning is happening, or where there are opportunities to help it occur and to encourage it in easy ways. And so I talked about the evolutionary change and the revolutionary change. You have to do both, I think, to be really effective. You have to look at the simple things. So if you just extend formal learning into the workplace and help build on that and ensure that the learning that occurs in training gets embedded, that's one aspect. But I think the other aspect is to think of it in a big scale picture in terms of how can we help our people to understand that development is something that occurs all the time. We learn from the cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
Humans are learning animals. And how do we exploit that? And how do we take down the barriers? It's not so much as trying to control it. It's often about taking down the barriers. And very simple things, such as when you get a group of people together for a meeting, just spend 5 minutes at the beginning or the end of that meeting, just talking about what learning has been occurring, what new things we've heard, or what new things we can do. Just sharing stories, really, and experiences, and that makes a huge difference.
But how can we measure the professional development of the personnel using the 70-20-10?
We measure 70-20-10 in exactly the same way as we should measure formal training, and that is we measure the outputs, we measure the performance change, we measure the behaviour change. It's absolutely no different. If I were to give advice around how you measure informal learning or formal learning, our answer would be you measure them the same way. You look at, has performance improved? If so, how has it improved? What the root causes of the performance improvement, and what impact does that have on the individual, on their team, and on the organisation. And actually, measuring learning, unfortunately, we've got into a state where we often don't measure learning. We measure short-term memory recall, if people can pass a test. That's not really learning, because learning is behaviour change. Sometimes we try and measure learning, but often we don't do it. So my answer, short term of my answer is, we do the same things we should have always been doing, and maybe this will help us think about how we measure our formal structured learning as well, to make it more useful.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.